Star Wars Resistance trailer breakdown, story synopsis, and a whole host of other interesting things connecting into the new animated series. That's the headlines on this week's episode of the Force Friday show. And joining me as ever is Stephen to discuss all things Star Wars. We're going to jump right into this topic of Resistance. Stephen, I'll start off by reading out the official synopsis, and then I'll let you come in and give your thoughts, and then we'll talk about the bloody trailer as well. For once, we've got a whole lot of information and stories to talk about this week, Stephen, about Star Wars. We're not making up things about our favourite scenes and stuff like that. But I digress. The synopsis is Resistance fighter Poe Dameron tasks young pilot Kazuda Kaz Jono with spying on the First Order. At the time, little was known about the secretive organisation and its strength. In order to fulfil his mission, Kaz travels to the space station Colossus, which is being used by many ships as a port to refuel and do repairs. However, there are also dangerous races taking place there, and after Kaz bragged with his piloting skills at his arrival there, he is soon drawn into one of the races. That is an intriguing concept, Stephen. I don't think that it could be the whole concept or synopsis of the entire series, because it would get boring very quickly watching this young fighter pilot racing in these dangerous races in Colossus. I presume this will be the first episode, and then we'll expand out into stories connecting into him spying and doing espionage stuff with the First Order. But it's interesting nonetheless. What's your thoughts on that synopsis?
Yeah, my thoughts, John, are they seem to be going with the same formula with the previous two animated series in the Clone Wars and Rebels. Just the synopsis describing this new character who's going to be our main character reminds me a lot of Ezra in Rebels, who is going to sort of be our perspective of the story. And you're getting the likes of Poe Dameron, Captain Phasma, and BB-8's turning up there as well. And there'll be other host of characters that are going to be... Yeah, and it's, these are going to be sort of secondary characters to this series, I do presume. I thoroughly enjoyed the trailer as well. I've got to say I was very surprised with the style they went for. When it was first announced, a lot of people were speculating that it was going to be the style of anime. I think it's got inspirational elements of anime, but certainly not full-on anime here. This reminds me of some of the animations I've been watching in the DC animated universe. Certainly it does remind me a lot of the one I've just watched earlier this week, Batman Year One. It's got that kind of style to it. Very comic book look. It's definitely a step away from Rebels and the Clone Wars. But one thing I did pick up in this trailer is the sequences don't really tell a story. No. It's really just a lot of clips from these upcoming episodes that's going to premiere. I think it's next month, or is it the first week, not October, I think it might be. Yeah. It didn't really give us a lot. It was really just a trailer that's showing us the style of the animation rather than letting us know about the characters. We did get a little bit about this character Kaz in a few snippets of some interactions with Poe Dameron, etc., and what he's capable of with his piloting skills and stuff like that. But overall, I felt the trailer was just like a lot of individual sequences stuck together. I think this is really just to condition us into a new way of thinking of how they're going to be doing this animated series. Certainly, it is a lot different from the previous two. Yes,
it is, Stephen. It's got a different and distinctive anime style animation, as you did say. I'm kind of repeating what you said, but yeah, it definitely has got a lovely visual aesthetic to it. That was the first thing I noticed right away. It's very Star Wars feeling as well. I mean, that's a bit of a stupid thing to say. It's a Star Wars series, so it should feel like Star Wars, but it does. It captures the spirit and the feel of Star Wars, just the music and the visuals, and some epic moments in there already. The shots of the racers zipping through that Colossus station over the water. I presume this is an oceanic planet. That was cool, as the moment with the TIE fighters, I believe it was, firing down on the station as well. The green laser bolts firing down and the explosions. That shot of Captain Phasma as well. I thought it was actually a gold stormtrooper at one point because of the reflections. It does, you're completely right, Stephen. It doesn't really tell any great story in general. It just introduces us to all the various different characters we're going to see popping up in this series. Introduces us to Kaz first and foremost. He gets the biggest chunk of the introductory elements in the trailer, because he's also going to be the primary protagonist in this series, and it's only right that he gets the biggest chunk. I like the fact that we got a lot of Poe as well, showing his more ruthless side. I believe he tosses someone off the edge of the station at one point. I don't know if it was him, but certainly Kaz asked him what was that whole pushing and throwing off the side thing, and he says ignore it. So that was cool. I don't think it really looks like Poe all that much when he says that, Stephen. It's kind of a bog standard Disney character. You could have seen him in Beauty and the Beast or anything, but certainly the voice acting skills of Oscar Isaac are there, so that's a bonus. We see BB-8 as well. There's some cool moments. It's a quick-paced, frenetic little trailer. It gives us a hint at the characters, shows us the setting of this Colossus station, which incidentally is beautiful. There's a wide shot at night of that sitting in the water, and it was very reminiscent of the Ralph McQuarrie matte paintings, which are so iconic, such as the Bespin one. That's always a standout for me. So they're kind of utilising the old styles of the station sitting on its own. We're seeing all the various different characters. There's a lot of Easter eggs in there as well. There was a moment on the green spaceship or racer of a Naboo symbol. It's like a Naboo ship, so that was very cool. That we're, even in things like this, we're hinting back to the prequels. It's always great to show some love to those films, because despite what your opinions are on them, they're part of Star Wars and they deserve to interconnect with all the other stories that are ongoing in this new era of Disney storytelling. But yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed the trailer. I thought it gave us everything we could possibly need in the lead up to this new series. I know they usually release a couple of episodes early at some of the cons and show the people there the episodes. I don't know if I've done it this time with it being a new release, but we get a whole host of alien characters in there as well. And as I did say in the background as you were talking, Steve, Unkar Plutt comes in as well, so I don't know if Simon Pegg's going to be voicing him. I highly doubt it. But yeah, all in all, thoroughly enjoyed the trailer. Short and sweet, only a minute 20 seconds long or something, but it gave me everything I wanted. It gave us all the cool new characters that we're going to see going forward, and it gave us some of the more memorable and favourites from The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi.
Yeah, John, just picking up what you were saying there, certainly the colour palette in this trailer seems to suggest that there's a lot of inspiration from the Ralph McQuarrie illustrations, which, you know, I totally dig. I think it's very important to remember that that Ralph played such a big part in the look of Star Wars very early days, before the cameras were even rolling. The other thing as well, what's more obvious is the time frame that we're dealing with here. This looks round about the time of The Force Awakens, or roughly round about that period anyway, more than it's been closer to Return of the Jedi era, which I think is a sensible move on Lucasfilm's part, because we're getting the Jon Favreau television series, which is going to take place 5, 6, 7 years after Return of the Jedi. It's good that they're staying clear of that time period, and they're sort of setting it prior to the events of The Force Awakens. So all in all, I mean, it was only about a minute and a half clip we saw, but there's a lot to take from that. Yeah. I think this is really just conditioning our eyes to accept this brand new style of animation from Star Wars.
Yeah, I've got no problem with accepting that, Stephen, because I actually enjoy it more than the Rebels and the Clone Wars animation. That's got its cool style as well. I mean, we've grown accustomed to that over the last decade, but I thoroughly enjoy this style. The final couple of things I'll say, I'll come back into what he says about Ralph McQuarrie. When you actually mentioned that, Stephen, it rung a bell, and it was that I recall reading maybe a few months back, maybe even longer than that Dave Filoni and the people involved in Rebels and Clone Wars were actually getting back and referencing the old Ralph McQuarrie matte paintings, some of the ones that weren't used for the original trilogy. I think he's got a whole host of them in stories and stuff, and they were getting back and using them as inspiration to bring them in and showing some love to some of the ones that maybe didn't make the cut. And it's great to see that guy's still having an influence on Star Wars going forward. Certainly what you says about it being closer to The Force Awakens and that being the correct decision. And obviously with that impacting on maybe the stories we're going to be getting told with Benioff and Weiss and Rian Johnson, and maybe even the Jon Favreau series as well. I find it interesting that, and it's interconnecting into that slightly, is that one of the photos is actually a Mandalorian symbol. And I did recall, I believe it was Ken Napsok on the Jedi Council, mentioning that he had heard that the Mandalorian story was going to be getting told prominently throughout the Favreau story. It may be interconnecting into the unknown regions of the galaxy, and that they would play a prominent role. So maybe this is them conditioning us to that, and maybe hinting where they're going forward in the future. They're going to tell a story of the Mandalorian wars and of Mandalore in general. But I don't know. But we're going to move on, Stephen. It's staying in the same topic, really, but we're going to move on to something interconnecting with it. There's two topics interconnecting with it in general. The first one is that Dave Filoni will not be involved in the day-to-day of Star Wars Resistance. And this may have some wide-ranging implications, Stephen, for the other Star Wars projects. It may just be that he is involved in the Clone Wars final series, which has just been announced. Or it may be that he is taking a bigger responsibility in the Favreau series as well, helping him write some things, maybe helping him direct a couple of episodes. I don't know.
Yeah, I was just going to say that, John, in regards to Filoni will be keeping himself busy with other things. I do note that this was from comicbook.com, part of the Star Wars section on their website, and Dave Filoni did quote, "Resistance is a bit different in that I'm not on the day-to-day. I created and set in motion, but I've given that to other people to raise up, people that I've worked with a long time, who I think deserve the opportunity to tell stories, and I think it's exciting, and give them my thoughts and notes. I was just doing that this morning like George Lucas would give me, so that's fun." I totally get that. That's his sort of passing on the baton, to these new creators and writers, and it's a sensible thing to do. I do think there's a bit of both, though. I think what Filoni's saying here is that he's spent a lot of time and a big part of his life with the previous two animations, so I can understand that he's possibly wanting to keep things fresh, introduce other creative people to get involved in this new look. It's a new era as well. You've got to remember Clone Wars in particular was part of the old George Lucas regime. Rebels, the stories are based on the old George Lucas regime. This is coming into the new Lucasfilm Disney era, where these stories are going to be set closer to the sequel trilogy. And but I think you're right. I think he's going to be busy, perhaps finishing off these Clone Wars episodes that he wanted to finish off and tie things up there. But I do think he is going to have some involvement in this television series, which is going to be produced by Jon Favreau. I think that is going to be the next step and the next stage in Filoni's development to becoming a more prominent and accomplished director.
Yeah, I certainly hope it is, Stephen, because that's the guy I want to see taking the more hands-on approach with the Star Wars films going forward. If it is indeed true that Kathleen Kennedy is going to be buggering off into the sunset later this year, I don't know if it's true. Certainly, fingers crossed, 2 fingers in every hand that I've got on me, crossed behind my back, hoping that she's going to bugger off. And if that is true, then I want to see this guy coming in a producer role, maybe a hands-on role, dealing with the films and the storytelling, because he just gets Star Wars, he knows what it's all about. And as we've seen with his involvement in the Clone Wars and in Rebels, the guy is just tailor-made for it. To me, he's the heir apparent of George Lucas, as he does say in that article. He's doing what George did with him, he's handing it on, giving them little tidbits and showing them and pointing them in the right direction for this series. I could have maybe been worried at some point in the past with him handing it over to someone else, but as he does say, these are people who deserve the opportunity to rise up and tell stories that they've maybe got in mind for this series. Certainly judging on the trailer that we were speaking about previously, it looks like they've produced something special anyway, so it's all the good, really. But when you look further down this article, I'm just going to briefly touch on this because it's not interconnecting into the main topic we were speaking about, but it's intriguing nonetheless. He goes on to speak about what his thoughts would be on maybe allowing other storytellers to continue the story of Ahsoka and Sabine, and he says that he couldn't imagine not being involved in some way with what happened to either of them, but that he does love the way that the stories of Clone Wars and Rebels were a unification, really taking those two characters further with a great deal of ideas on what they've been up to and where they go. He thought it was really fantastic, and I agree with that. When you think of it, the Clone Wars was the prominent female figure was Ahsoka, and in Rebels it was Sabine. Those two made it to the end, I believe, of Rebels, and the futures are still to be told. So hopefully at some point we'll get those stories told as well, with Dave Filoni being very much at the helm of it, maybe even in a live action sense. I know that Rosario Dawson expressed her interest in playing the character of Ahsoka in particular, so hopefully we'll get that with Dave in there. But we're going to move on to the next little interconnected topic into the whole Resistance thing, and it's all about Leia Organa being in the new Star Wars Resistance series. And the news of this was actually, it wasn't officially released by Disney or Lucasfilm. It certainly wasn't shown in the trailer, any hint of Leia being there, but I believe the voice actress Rachel Butera announced it on Twitter. Apparently she's going to be playing the character, I presume, and that she's going to make an appearance in it, which is very intriguing indeed, Stephen. It's going to be a much older Leia, set in between the events of the original trilogy and the sequel trilogy, so we'll get to see more of that character, which is always a good and positive thing for me.
Yeah, this is the beauty of animation, John. You can get away with these things long after the actors that portrayed these characters have passed away, sadly. You get a very similar voice actor in, and it works. I'm not surprised that Leia's going to appear in this, because she is a big part of the sequel trilogy as well, and her formation of the Resistance. It's going to be very interesting to see how this shapes. Obviously, it's different for Jon Favreau's live action, where he can't use a young Luke, he can't use a young Leia or a young Han, because it's just technically impossible for a television series to pull that off and make it convincing. In animation, you can get away with these things. And it's going to be very interesting, as I said. I'm very much hoping that, I know that it's an animated series that's going to be directed mostly at kids and stuff like that and families, but I do hope that perhaps that we do get a bit of politics in there as well with Leia. I would like to see her battles with fellow rebels, that are aware of her background, who her father was. It's certainly something that we didn't really get, that I thought we were going to get in The Last Jedi with Laura Dern's character. I thought there was going to be a lot of conflict, but it turns out they were best of friends in The Last Jedi. Yeah, and I felt it was a bit of a missed opportunity. I would love to have saw Laura Dern's character, General Holdo, maybe throwing something back in Leia's face about Darth Vader or something like that. That would have been quite cool to see, but I don't think they're going to go down that road, unfortunately, though. It is a kids' television series. I don't think kids are going to be that interested in the politics of Star Wars. And there's plenty of books out there anyway. There is that, I think it's Claudia Gray that covered the book anyway, Leia. I've not read yet. I don't know if you have, John, but
I've not yet.
it certainly hints that they go down that road anyway. But I'd love to see this in some kind of, television series or film or something like that. But nevertheless, I'm not surprised to see the character of Leia appearing, from what we read anyway on Cinema Blend's article here, that she's going to be appearing in it. How prominent, I don't know. We know that she appeared in, I think, one episode of Rebels. I think it might have been season 2. But as I said, we know that this series is going to be based on this young guy who's sent in to spy on the First Order and stuff like that. So I don't know what the capacity will be for the character of General Leia, but I hope she's in it quite a bit.
Yeah, so do I. Rachel Butera actually says on Twitter that I can finally announce I have the incomprehensible honour of voicing the role of Leia Organa in the new Star Wars Resistance out this October. This is actually the second time that the character of Princess Leia has been involved in an animated series of Star Wars. She was in Rebels Season 2 and she was voiced by a different voice actress, Julie Dawn. So it's always great to see more of Leia, especially following the sad passing of Carrie Fisher. It was a big fear of fans that after the death of her, they would the character would fall to the wayside and they wouldn't really shine the love and the attention on it that it fully deserves. But as you did say, Stephen, it's the beauty of animation that you can take a character that's been synonymous with a certain actress over the decades and put a different spin on it. Look into it's set apparently 6 months to maybe even a year or so prior to the events of The Force Awakens, but you can do something like this with the character because it is animated. So I don't know what size of role she's going to have. It's very tight-lipped just now. We wouldn't even know she was in it if it wasn't for Rachel Butera announcing this on Twitter. But one thing's for sure, I'm sure she'll have an important role to play. We do know that it's going to focus primarily on the character of Cass, who's young, maybe headstrong and doing the heavy lifting work, going and spying and doing espionage missions on the First Order. We know that his primary commanding figure is going to be Poe Dameron. He's going to be issuing the orders and telling them what to do. But I'm sure we'll come away from the hustle and bustle of his missions, looking in the First Order, and we'll take a step back and look at Leia, maybe doing higher up things in the Resistance, commanding various different operations and stuff like that. I don't know. The possibilities are endless. I hope it is set a little bit further back though. If I do recall, there was a plot synopsis released short not long ago that was deleted hinted at a 6-month gap between this and The Force Awakens. That wouldn't give you much scope to continue on and tell the story. You'd be limited. So I hope they give it plenty of breathing room to do what they want to do with, and then we can see more of General Leia, Princess Leia, whatever the hell you want to call her, doing her stuff, coordinating stuff for the Resistance. And it would be very interesting, Stephen, to see her past as a daughter of Darth Vader and Anakin Skywalker being brought up to use as a stick to beat her with. That'd be cool. And seeing her swat them away like hard as nails princess she is. But yeah, I've not got much more to add.
No, John, I hope we're going to see a bit more of a relationship between Leia and Poe as well.
Yeah.
I think there was a bit more of that expanded in The Last Jedi. There was a kind of the son that she always wanted to have in Poe, certainly in The Last Jedi, keeping him right in a lot of things. Not afraid to tell him what she thought of him and his actions. So I think it'd be quite good to see a lot more of that happening in this, because I think it would add a bit more weight to the relationship going into watching The Last Jedi. There wasn't a lot in The Force Awakens that I can recall. I've not seen the movie in a little while, but I don't think there was a lot of interactions between Poe Dameron and General Leia. We did sense from the very kick-off of The Force Awakens that Poe did have a lot of respect for her, particularly in the opening scenes with Max von Sydow. So it'll be a very interesting anyway. I'm looking forward to seeing this series now after seeing that trailer. And, you know, regardless of Dave Filoni, he'll probably be taking a back step anyway, like we expected. And it's going to be very interesting to see what kind of capacity that General Leia is going to feature in this new series. But we're going to move on to our next topic here, John. This is one that kind of dreading being released, really, because it's no surprise. We're not really surprised, because this thing's been getting dragged out for such a long time now in regards to Ewan McGregor. Will he or will he not be appearing as Obi-Wan Kenobi again in regards to a standalone movie? But Ewan McGregor has said that there are no plans in making an Obi-Wan standalone movie for the time being. There's certainly nothing in the works. We knew that anyway. It's not really breaking news. We kind of knew this anyway, but actually hearing it from the horse's mouth really does sour things a little in regards to where they're going to go with the standalone movies, if they're going to make any more after the flop that was Solo, A Star Wars Story.
Yeah, I find this news very disappointing, Stephen. All the more disappointing that they're using Solo's poor box office performance as an excuse to cancel these standalone projects. That's all hearsay, incidentally, but it does look like that is the case, because Solo, A Star Wars Story was hamstrung by the boneheaded decisions of the Lucasfilm president, Kathleen Kennedy, deciding to hire 2 directors who she knew were famed for improvising, who were famed for their zany comedic tone that they bring to films. Did she not watch 21 and 22 Jump Street? She brought these guys in and then she fell out with them time and time again, apparently, and then she'd dumped them off the production with 2 or 3 weeks to go until the film was done, wrapped filming. This fell on her shoulders. It fell on the incompetence of Disney not producing or not promoting the film until the very last moment in some bizarre ploy to push Infinity War into prominence in its place. Infinity War was a cultural thing. It was 10 years of hard work. People were going to go and watch that film regardless. Everyone knew it was coming out. Why they decided to not give Solo, A Star Wars Story the moment it deserved, the promotion it deserved, well in advance of the film releasing, I don't know. That was the reasons it failed. So to then hinder any other standalone films in the future because of their boneheaded decisions, time and again, throughout the whole of Lucasfilm and Disney, it's just completely mind-boggling to me. And it's a shame for the fans, because the fans have been wanting this Obi-Wan or Ben Kenobi film for years upon years upon years. It's such an interesting story. It's the only interesting story of the original characters that I would really like to see happen. There's been talk of Luke Skywalker. You could do it. You could do it with Sebastian Stan. But this is the guy I want to see having his story told, especially when you've got Ewan McGregor so willing to play the character.
Yeah, exactly, John. You've got the actor that played the the younger version in the prequel trilogy, who's willing to do it. He actually says he would totally do it, of course, but there are no plans as such to do it, as far as I know. It really is frustrating, because this is the movie that we wanted, more than we wanted a Han Solo movie, which we got instead. I've made it no secret. I enjoyed the Solo movie as a Star Wars adventure. After the disappointment of The Last Jedi, it was probably the film that really I was looking for. I just sort of, a Star Wars adventure that wasn't going to be taken too seriously. It certainly did hit all those marks. But the Obi-Wan film is the one that the fans want to see. It's the one that the most obvious person wants to do as well, Ewan McGregor. He was one of the positives from the prequel trilogy, him and Ian McDiarmid. And there's so much scope there with the character as well, what he's been doing in between episode 3 and 4. Clearly it was hinted in Rogue One with Bail Organa, mentioning, maybe not in name, but we knew who he was talking about, that he was going to make contact with his old Jedi friend. And it's interesting. I think it's more interesting now that because of the reintroduction of Darth Maul into the animated series, and then we got the little cameo in Solo as well, which was one of the plus points of that movie. Although it wasn't necessary, it'd be interesting to see what Obi-Wan has been doing in between episodes 3 and 4. And I know we got some storytelling in Rebels, but to have the actual actor that played him, the younger version of the character, I should say, because we don't have Alec Guinness anymore, sadly, but to have Ewan McGregor willing to do this, it just seems like a missed opportunity. It just seems to me that Lucasfilm and Disney just don't really want to give the fans what they want. It's absolutely madness. They seem to be going out their road to do the opposite. I don't know if that's just being cantankerous or not, but it's a missed opportunity. It's a money-making exercise as well. That is an absolute goldmine of a movie that you can make. It possibly could, you could have sequels to it as well, depending on the time frame of the movie. If it's going to be set over maybe a few weeks or whatever, it could certainly work. If they do get a good response to it, then they maybe look at possible sequels to maybe having an Obi-Wan trilogy. I know I'm getting ahead of myself here, and especially when there's no plans for this, but it's just so frustrating, and just I'm a Star Wars fan like everyone else, who likes these characters, and as you said, he's one of the characters that's so prominent in Star Wars storytelling, but we don't know enough of his early years. No. And I know he was in the prequel trilogy, but there wasn't a lot of character development in those films to begin with, and this is where they could have started to really build these characters and really give the character, the Alec Guinness version of character, a little bit more background and a little bit more emotion. Yeah,
absolutely. And it's all the more frustrating because, as you did say, Stephen, Ewan is willing to do it. He says in the article, said yes so many times, it's like he's sort of touting for work at Disney's door. He certainly doesn't need to tout for work. He's a massively successful actor over his career, in a whole host of different things. Most recently in Fargo, he's a Golden Globe winning actor, so he certainly doesn't need to tout for work. They should be coming to him. They should have a story in place. It's been 4-5 years now since he took over from Lucasfilm, the merger. They should have had a story in place. We should have had this story before Solo, a Star Wars story. This is the one everybody wants. That alongside perhaps a Boba Fett criminal underworld story. I personally don't really care about that, but I know some people do. This is the one that I want. And to see that they've not even spoken to the guy, it's just incredibly disappointing. But listen, I'm not the president of Lucasfilm. I don't make these decisions. We know who does, and sooner she's gone and we get someone like Dave Filoni in place who can make a decision and put out a good body story, put in a good director, and give us the story we want, the better.
I was just reading that article there from IGN, John, IGN.com. He's very humble, and just mentioning in this quote here, it says that McGregor himself suggested that this point in the series storyline would be a good place for an Obi-Wan film, and suggested that perhaps another actor could take on the role to account for the time difference. He actually says that there must be a good story to tell as they're doing spin-offs. There's likely to be a good Obi-Wan between me and Alec Guinness in that time. I disagree with you there, Ewan. I actually think you should be playing it. It's very easy just to age you to that sort of point in time. We've seen some of these photoshops where they've blended both Alec Guinness and Ewan McGregor's images together, and it looks very... 1 minute you're seeing Ewan McGregor and the next you're seeing Alec Guinness. It's bizarre, but I actually disagree with him. I think he's been very humble there. He's quite a humble chap. I wouldn't like Lucasfilm to pick up on that quote, actually, because it might give them ideas. I certainly want Ewan McGregor on board for any potential Obi-Wan film, but it doesn't look like it's going to happen.
Yeah, the final thing I'll say is to bridge that gap, it's quite easy to do. You get the permission of Alec Guinness's estate to take some of his features and put them onto Ewan McGregor. There you go. You put that horrendous wig on him, and he half looks like him anyway, so it's not difficult to do, and I certainly don't want another actor coming in when you've got Ewan there. Good Scott and all of that. But I'm going to move on to another topic. We've got a whole lot of topics here, if you don't know already, and it's all about Samuel Jackson thinking his Star Wars character can return despite one major plot hole. I think that major plot hole is the fact that he did lose a limb. He was electrocuted and he was thrown thousands of feet out of a window to his death. Samuel, you do not need this, my man. Come on, what are you doing? Mace Windu is dead. Let it go. Go into another film. You've got Mr. Glass. Come on.
Yeah, exactly. And he's got the Nick Fury as well character to portray. Yeah, exactly. You know, he's keeping himself busy, but he is a big Star Wars fan, and I can understand where he's coming from. He does make some good points, though. All those things that happened to Mace Windu have happened to previous Jedi. We've seen Anakin losing limbs, we've seen Luke being electrocuted, and we've seen Jedi falling from great heights and surviving. But the problem with this is that it all happened to Mace Windu, all these things. I can't see him turning up now. I mean, the whole point of it takes away the sort of power of Palpatine as well if he survived that, because Palpatine was intent on finishing him off in the Chancellor's office. That was his plan. Certainly the minute that Anakin walked through those doors, that was his plan to really turn things around, and certainly did in Mace Windu's part. He was certainly on top. He certainly was winning the battle, but I just think that Samuel Jackson is such a big Star Wars fan. He begged and begged for years for George Lucas to give him some small role. He said he would even appear as a stormtrooper. Turns out that George had a part from a play anyway in the regards to Mace Windu character. He was disappointed, I think, when he started to sit down and read the scripts, that he was going to be sitting about a lot, scratching his chin and talking to Yoda. And that's kind of how that character did play out. It wasn't really till the sort of last half hour of Attack of the Clones he got some action in there on Geonosis, which, if you look back on that now, looks like a terribly video game from maybe the first PlayStation console.
It's like a video game from the Amiga scene.
Yeah, it's really poor. And he had a little bit in Revenge of the Sith as well, which we kind of laugh about now because the Jedi that were sent to take down Palpatine were pathetic apart from Mace Windu. But I kind of feel sorry for him because he's such a massive fan of the series, and he's desperate to return in any fashion, but it's not going to happen because these events all happened between episode 1, 2 and 3. Nobody mentioned them at all in episode 4, 5, 6, 7 or 8. So I just think it would be quite jarring to see him turn up in some capacity in episode 9.
Yeah, it wouldn't make any sense at all, but listen, he was always dancing a dangerous line between the light and the dark. That's why he had a pink violet coloured lightsaber dancing between the blue and the red. So who knows, maybe that little limb dismemberment, electrocution and fall from 2,000 feet at the hands of the Emperor or Chancellor Palpatine, whatever the hell he was at that point, maybe that sent him to the dark side and he ran away like a scalded cat into the darkness or the unknown regions and transformed into Snoke. Maybe that's why I've not got the backstory of Snoke yet, Stephen, because I want to get Mace in and show you the transformation of him as the years go over and over and over. I didn't realise he was almost immortal though, so I don't know how they do that. But listen, I'm being a little bit facetious here. I love Samuel Jackson, and if they could bring him back in some way that would make sense, I wouldn't be completely against it. Such is my love for the man, and such I didn't mind the character of Mace Windu that much. He was one of the better things in the prequel trilogy. There wasn't a great many good things, no, and from a character standpoint. I mean, we had that horrendous Dax character from that 1950s Back to the Future style canteen, and not a great deal of other interesting characters. Jango Fett, no. But listen, if it was to happen, it'd happen, but I hope it doesn't. I hope it gets buried in a very large and deep well, never to be seen again. We're going to move on though to the next topic, and the final topic of this week's Force Friday show, and it's about a rumoured Star Wars 9 title that actually might make fans happy. I doubt it, because the Star Wars fans are very unhappy, Cheeto eating chaps these days. But I'll let you in, Stephen. What's your thoughts on this title?
Yeah, John, this one, I think it was on Reddit or something. I can't remember. It was certainly on something, but we've picked this up on movieweb.com, who are kind of covering this latest rumour that episode 9 is going to be billed Star Wars A New Order. I've got kind of mixed feelings on this. It's really playing into the sort of how you're going to take this title, very much like the sort of big debate that was The Last Jedi. I remember when that was announced. I think it was just at the turn of the year in 2017 when that was announced, and then the big debate was who is The Last Jedi, who they're referring to. This one's got a similar kind of tones to it, The New Order, in regards to, are they referring to the Jedi Order, are they referring to the First Order? And I get that, so it's quite clever in that sense, but I just find, it's the very last Star Wars film in regards to the Skywalker saga, and I don't really know what the best title would be for the very last film in this series, but I just find that's kind of flat in my opinion. But as I said, it's not been confirmed in any fashion. I don't think we're going to actually get the title of this film till maybe the turn of the year, maybe January 2019.
Yes, in terms of potential titles, I don't know if Star Wars The New Order is indeed going to be the title. Very unlikely, seeing as though it's coming from Reddit, which is a wretched hive of villainy and scum and villainy. You're quite right, Stephen. So very unlikely that's going to be the title. It wouldn't be the worst suggestion though, as you did say. You kind of summed it up perfectly. Could be the New Order or the First Order, led by Kylo Ren, rising to prominence. That certainly would be an interesting end to the sequel trilogy. Or it could be the New Order of Jedi, led by Broomkid and Rey, taking on the might of the First Order. Certainly hope it's not Broomkid. But I think if Kathleen Kennedy is to be leaving at the end of the year, Stephen, I'm not hinting at this, I'm willing this to happen. I would have thought that the title would either be, as you did say, Stephen, The Force is Fierce, or Star Wars Episode 9, The Force is Female. But that wouldn't be my decision either. I'm not the president of Lucasfilm, and I don't decide these matters. But it's all speculation, it's fun speculation. I'm not against feminism, incidentally. I'm not one to ruffle anybody's feathers. I don't give a shit about it, and that's the truth. I don't think it belongs in Star Wars, but that's another story entirely. We're not talking about that crap. But who knows, maybe he's got a Mystic Meg crystal ball and he's seen the future and he foresees these things. I don't know, I'm gibbering crap, and we are at the end of the Force Friday show for this week. We'd just like to thank you once again for listening to us gibbering on, me in particular, and we'll be back next Tuesday with Box Office Chat.
Remember guys, if you enjoyed that episode, then do hit that like button, comment below, and maybe subscribe to the channel if you haven't done already. If you want to follow us on social media for all the latest updates from Movie Burner Entertainment, then we can be found on Twitter and Facebook at Movie Burners. You can also listen to us on Google Play and iTunes at the Movie Burner Podcast. And last but not least, if you want to access all the latest written reviews and the occasional article, then that can be found on our website at movieburnerentertainment.org. Until the next time, goodbye.